Welcome everyone, welcome to the Women in Technology event for 2019. Really excited to be here. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. So the exits are just over here and here, and if you need to use the bathrooms, they're just out through this hallway and to the left. And don't do what I did and try and open the cupboard door when you're leaving. So before we get started tonight, as a reflection of this institution's recognition of the deep history and culture of the island, the University of Tasmania wishes to acknowledge the Muhunina people, the traditional owners and custodians of the land upon which this campus was built. So again, welcome. My name is Rebecca Brann and I am the MC for tonight. Thank you all for being here. This is really exciting. It's our third year of doing this event, and every year it gets bigger and better. You're probably wondering why I'm the MC. One obvious thing is that I'm a woman, so I thought that would be a good start. But more importantly, I really truly believe in what today represents. And that's the opportunity to promote the conversation of diversity in our workplace. Whether you're a woman, a different demographic background, a minority group, we have an opportunity to make a difference. And we have the opportunity to be more inclusive, encouraging, and accepting of the power that diversity brings. So I want to share with you my first memory of technology. It was probably when I was about 12 years old. And I was sitting with my parents at the computer and they asked me, can you please help me to send an email to my family back in Romania? So my family and my parents are Eastern European. They have a very strong European accent, so second generation Australian. And as you can imagine, if you can picture this, them sitting at the computer going, Becky, I tried to double click the mouse, but it did not work. So pretty much I got my first glimpse of technology there, and I for sure thought I'd never work in technology because what hope do I have if they don't even know how to click a mouse? But yet here I am. And how did I get here? So most of my life I was a professional tennis player, and I was striving to be the best in playing tennis. But I also had a really big passion of helping people. And what does helping people and technology have to do with one another? Well, I think it's safe to say that technology is a part of everything these days. Whether it's an email, whether it's Uber Eats, social media, it's everywhere and we are immersed in it. So what I came to realise throughout my journey in tennis is that that's also linked. I didn't realise that technology played a big part in tennis. I used so much of it to analyse data and understand statistics and see how I could be the best in tennis and compare it to the world's best. So even in that moment, whilst I didn't realise it then, looking back now, it played a big part in who I am today. But most importantly, I realised that to be the best in something, to be the most innovative, you need to be part of technology because that's where the opportunities lie. And the other part about that is that I wanted to be part of something that helped navigate other people through technology and make it simple and easy to use. So now I am in IT, I'm a change manager, and that is not a very technical role if you look at it. But what I do is I'm the conduit between the technology and the people. And I ensure that when we deliver a project or change, it's clearly communicated, supported and adopted by staff and students. So really, I'm getting to live my passion by helping other people, and it's in technology. So really, I'm getting to help people feel comfortable and in the ever-changing world of systems and technology. So why are we here tonight? What can we do? And where do we start? I'm really excited that we have three amazing women tonight who are going to share their journeys of technology, their careers in technology, and their views on promoting diversity and inspiring a workplace that embraces that. Before I introduce our first speaker, I would like to introduce CIO, Adrian Dillon, who's going to give us a little bit of history about these events and also how it plays an important part in our IT diversity strategy.
Hi everyone. As Beck said, I'm Adrian Dillon. I'm the Acting Chief Information Officer here at the University of Tasmania. We undertake a number of outreach events each year, and as Beck said, this is the third year. Other than this event, we undertake an event called UHAC. UHAC's actually held the first week of September this year, 2.5-day event, where we inspire diverse teams. That's what we're here to talk about, diverse people coming together to solve the problems of today and the problems of tomorrow. As part of that, we're wanting to get groups that might have a coding background. They might be great storytellers, or they might be a musician that can bring some other aspect to a great product or service. So that's going to be held soon, and we'd encourage you all to actually register. You can see outside where you can do that. So I'll do a bit of a plug for that. We also last week did one called Tech for Girls, which is fantastic. So we had 5 schools come along, and we had little booths set up where we talked about 3D printing, laser etching, drones, and VR as well. And they were really interested. It was interesting to get some of the feedback forms. One of them was, "It's great, you had some of your scientists here. I never thought of technology outside the traditional IT field. I'd love to do that." One was a stem cell scientist, and she'd worked with one of our team to actually get a 3D print, a new little way of mixing some chemicals that'll actually grow the cells. It was quite interesting. And then we had another one where other students said, "Well, this was great to be here. There were no annoying boys to get in our way." So I thought that was pretty real. So we say, no, it's about diversity. So again, it's great, and it's talking about technology. It was great that we've got Beck here emceeing, because as good as the technology is, it's all about the change and how people can use it. And that's one of the challenges. And so it's important that we actually get people from diverse backgrounds who can be a storyteller, actually say and show how you can apply the technology. So that's enough from me. But what I've got here is a throwable microphone. So what I'm going to do is ask a few people, why'd you come today?
Adrian, we discussed my displeasure at this. I came today because Beck personally invited me at a private function a couple of weeks ago. As my husband explains, he also works in IT for the uni. I don't consider myself to be an overly competent person with technology, but I work in a very technology-based environment. So I'm an emergency dispatcher, so we use multiple systems, GIS mapping, all kinds of stuff like that. When I first got my job, my husband and family actually thought it was quite entertaining. They weren't really sure how I was going to do it. It's been 9 years.
Say something. I'm going to throw it.
I was going to say, yeah, it might be a bit concerning. I actually work as an internship coordinator for young people who are working in IT and engineering. So I've got a lot of female engineers on my books at the moment, which is great to see. I've seen it increase over the last 2 years. So this for me is just a really great insight to what's kind of happening here in Hobart. I just moved here a month ago, so yeah.
And you love it?
Of course.
Okay, one last person. I won't lob it too far. Over here.
I work at Savage Interactive as a quality assurance team leader. I have 2 beautiful women who work on my team and are outstanding as much as the guys, and just want to learn how to be more included in the workplace, I guess.
Thank you. Yeah, so thanks everyone. So what all these events are about are really trying to encourage people to think about what the other opportunities are, how we can work together more effectively, and how we can encourage, I suppose, the youth of today to look at STEM-related subjects and opportunities, but also from ourselves. You don't have to come from a technical background to get into a technology-related field, and you'll hear from the stories today that that's not necessarily the case. Or you might have started with a technology field and gone completely somewhere else. So with that, I'll hand back to Beck. Thanks everyone, and enjoy.
Okay, so our first speaker tonight was recommended to us by last year's speaker and CIO of UniSuper, Anna Leibel. Originally from Launceston, and before starting a career in IT, Christie completed her Bachelor of English Literature and Sociology and a Graduate Diploma of Social Science at the University of Tasmania. Today, Christie is the Cyber Resilience Lead at UniSuper, where she helps employees understand cybersecurity threats and how to take the right steps to prevent them. Christie works with the information security team to provide employees with simple, easy to understand advice on cyber safety from home and work, as well as up-to-date information on the latest cybersecurity threats and how to respond. She's a bubbly, intelligent woman who fell into IT by luck and made an incredible career of it for 23 years. We are stoked that she was able to join us tonight and share her incredibly amazing and funny journey. Please welcome, all the way from Melbourne, Christie Wilson.
Thanks, Rebecca. I'm Christie Wilson, and as Rebecca said, I'm the Cyber Resilience Lead at UniSuper. And so I'm here today, to share my story with you. I recently caught up with a couple of old uni friends, and we were reflecting on where our careers have taken us. There was the double maths major who's got a really successful career in disability services. There was the economics graduate who went back to uni, retrained as a lawyer, and now runs an inner city law firm. And me, the English Lit and Sociology graduate who's had a successful 23-year career in information technology. And I can pretty confidently say that I owe my IT career to two things. And those two things are Days of Our Lives and the Bret Easton Ellis novel, American Psycho. Let me give you some context. So I read a study, I think it was a 2017 Australian study, that said a third of Australian graduates don't work in the field that they studied in. And I also read a 2013 US study that said only 27% of graduates work in the field that they studied in. And that was certainly the case for me. So sociology is a really, really broad field, and there are lots and lots of places that you can go with a sociology degree. And here are the top jobs for sociology majors. And that really hasn't changed much in the last 25 or so years since I finished uni. And most of these roles I've worked with over the course of my career, but they were never really the roles that I thought about when I was at uni. And to be honest, I never thought about information technology either. So to explain how I ended up in information technology, I need to take you back to 1993. I look like this. And PCs in our state-of-the-art sociology lab down at Sandy Bay looked like that. So I started uni in 1989, and that was also the same year that Australia joined the internet. And that first connection was made through Melbourne University. And for the first few years, the internet was predominantly used by computer scientists for research. And by 1993, it was starting to expand a bit more, but it was still predominantly used in research across the universities. Today, 86% of households are connected to the internet. And the kinds of things that we take for granted today, like Uber Eats and Uber and Netflix and iTunes and online shopping and ordering your groceries online, those kind of things were never even thought about 30 years ago. And today, we just take that kind of thing for granted. So one of the things that I was doing in the sociology department when I was doing my postgrad was trying to find information and research for students to help them with the undergrad courses that we were doing. So trying to use the internet in a way to get research for students that would save them spending hours and hours in the library and, trying to get those really scarce as hen teeth books that you try and get from the special secure part of the library. So I started to do some research. And in a pre-Google world, the way that you found information on the internet was through news groups. And so I would spend quite a bit of my time trying to find information about relevant sociology undergrad courses that I could provide back to the department. And through the course of this, I came across Days of Our Lives news groups. And when I was at uni, I was absolutely obsessed with Days of Our Lives. It was my favourite TV show. And so I found these news groups where I could find plot lines, I could find story arcs, I could find out things that were going to happen to characters in 5 or 10 years' time that we hadn't got in Australia yet. And importantly, I was also able to make connections with people around the world who also had the same obsession with me, and we were able to start talking about Days of Our Lives together. So I was able to connect with people in a way that had never previously been possible. Now, understandably, our sociology professor, who had got a lot of money provided by the university for this state-of-the-art lab, was pretty frustrated with me. And one day he came into the sociology department and said, "Christie, everybody else is working on their thesis. You're researching Days of Our Lives. What are you going to do with your life?" And little did we both know where I was going to end up. So shortly after that, I got offered a job in Melbourne. It wasn't in IT, it was working for Oxfam, and then I moved to Melbourne, and so that was my leaving Tasmania and starting my job in the workforce. So fast forward a couple of years, I'm living in Melbourne and I'm having an absolute ball. And through my work, which is still not in IT, I meet somebody and we form a bond over the book American Psycho. He was reading it in the tea room at work. We discovered that we both liked it. We then discovered that we had the same kind of interests in art house films and music and movies and things like that. And we became firm friends. He was finishing an IT degree at Monash Uni and he started working for a company called Dataplex who did telecommunications. So they built things like modem racks for the likes of Telstra. And they were looking for someone to join their sales support team. So that was my first entry into information technology. So I was working with a sales team, but I was spending a lot of time with my friend who worked in the software department. And I found that I was really able to understand technology and to pick up technology concepts quickly. But more importantly, I was able to communicate that in a business language to both our sales team and to our customers. So that was really my start in IT. And I did that for a year until I moved into the IBM world. So in '97, I joined an IBM business partner, again in the sales team. And a few months in, I got the opportunity to join a networking pre-sales team. And so that was a bunch of really highly technical architects who would spend time developing networking solutions for our clients. They would then bring that back to me and I'd work with IBM and our vendors to price that up for tenders and quotes and the like. To this day, that is still one of the best jobs that I've ever had because I was really working with a really small, tight-knit group of highly, highly technical people who took me under their wing, explained everything that I needed to know about networking, and I in turn was able to take that back to our sales team and importantly into our customers to talk to them about how we could help them from a business perspective. So really bridging that gap between the technical people and between our customers who didn't really understand technology and didn't need to understand technology, but they were looking for solutions for their business problems. So that then led me into a role working in software licensing with Microsoft, which led into some more pre-sales roles and then eventually into a greenfields role where I started selling hardware and software solutions into universities and TAFEs, higher education. And all of these roles were greenfields roles. And what that means is that they didn't exist in the organisation before I took them on. But as a need came about, I stepped into a new area in the business, tried to figure out what we needed to do, while at the same time presenting a really professional front to both our sales team and to our customers to say, yeah, we do this all the time. We absolutely, have got processes and procedures in place for doing this. So almost that smoke and mirrors where you're presenting a professional front, but you're kind of figuring out things behind the scenes. So I did that for a number of years until 2003. I got the opportunity to move into the service management side of the business. So we had about 100 consultants across Melbourne, Sydney and Canberra. And I started to work with the service management director to manage the consultants and make sure that they were servicing our clients. So it's that really fine balance between making sure you've got the right consultants for the right jobs and making sure that you're billing your customers, because that's how a consulting firm makes its money. At the time, there was a new IT framework called the IT Information Library, ITIL, becoming popular in Australia. And my company and IBM wanted to get some certifications in this framework because it would look good for them on sales proposals, saying, yeah, we're certified in this. So I put my hand up to do a couple of courses, and I spent about 6 months learning the ITIL framework and being able to apply the theory that I was learning from the framework with the practical experience that I had in the organisation as well. And at that time, we were developing a lot of applications for clients, and our clients were the likes of Qantas and Telstra and ANZ and NAB and SEEK and UniSuper, where I am now. And as part of developing those applications, we also started to develop support agreements for our clients as well. So I then started to work with lawyers to develop contracts, which we would then go out and negotiate with our clients. And while in the back end, I built up a team that was able to provide 24/7 support to be able to deliver the support obligations that we were signing up with our clients. And again, all greenfields roles that hadn't existed in the organisation prior to me stepping in and taking them on. So a lot of it is, again, presenting that professional front out to the clients to say, yes, this is what we can offer you and this is what we've got, while you're building it behind the scenes. And as I said, one of those clients was UniSuper, and they came to me in late 2005 and said, would you like to come and join us? We're putting in a new superannuation application and we want you to head up our service delivery team. So support us as the application gets bedded down. And I thought, it'll be 3 to 6 months of paying for a new application, then I'll be fine. So in 2006, I moved from IT vendor land to business IT, and boy, was that a roller coaster ride. So when I worked in vendor land, you're not working day to day with your clients. So you have that opportunity to regroup as an organisation and come up with strategies for working with your clients, but also when things go wrong and you've got problems to solve, you've got the space and the time to work on them before you go back with solutions to your clients. In business IT, I was working shoulder to shoulder with my clients day in, day out. They didn't understand technology. They were superannuation professionals. They didn't need to understand technology. They just wanted it to work. So I was sort of on a learning curve like this, where I had to learn the business environment. I had to learn superannuation. I knew nothing about it. And I needed to be able to communicate in a way that was professional and consistent while we were still trying to build things in the back end and we were working on the same floor and in the same building as our customers. So that then led me into a role of taking over an application support team, which then led into taking over the audit and compliance function across technology and projects, which then led me into setting up a vendor management team and then a vendor governance team, and finally into setting up a governance, risk and compliance team across technology and projects. Again, all greenfields roles, all roles that hadn't existed before I'd stepped into them. And the reason these roles came about is because we got bigger as an organisation, regulations and legislation would change, and we would need to grow and improve our processes. And so I did that probably for the first 9 or 10 years that I worked at UniSuper. And then 2 years ago, I reached a fork in the road. Recently, I read a blog which talked about, does your soul match your role? And what it was talking about is does what you do every day have enough passion and enough drive to take you away from the things that you would do when you're not at work? Whether that's your friends, whether that's your family, whether it's your kids, your fur kids, your hobbies, anything that you do when you're not at work. And 2 years ago, my soul no longer matched my role. We had a new executive who had joined us, and over lunch we sat down and she said, what are your career aspirations? Where do you want to go? What do you want to do next? And I was really honest with her and said, I don't know where I want to go next. I don't know what I want to do, but I do know that I don't want to continue doing what I'm doing now. And so I asked her, what do you think I can do? And she said, you can do whatever you put your mind to. And it wasn't the answer that I wanted, but it was absolutely the answer that I needed. So I went away on leave for a few weeks and I reflected on what she'd said to me. And I also thought about whether it was time for me to leave the organisation. You know, I built up a lot of skills over 10 years there and 10 years in Vendorland, and I thought perhaps I'll just go and do the same kind of job in another organisation, because that'd be easy. I could just take the skill set that I've got and pick it up and go somewhere new. So I came back from leave and a couple of opportunities were offered to me, and one of them was to join our information security team and have a look at what we needed to do to uplift security. So I thought, do I take the easy route and just go to another organisation and do the same thing, or do I do the interesting thing and start again and start in a greenfields role? And ultimately that's what I did. And so now I work in cybersecurity. And at first it was really, really hard. The existing team didn't want me there. They resented the fact that we were going to do an uplift for the team. I didn't know what I was doing and I had no idea where to start. And so I did a lot of reading. And I also did a lot of talking to people. I went to conferences, I talked to people that I knew in the organisation and in the industry. I reached out to people in the security industry to see if they would share their stories with me, and they did. And I started to build up a picture of what I thought cybersecurity should look like in an organisation and where we needed to go. A few months later, we had a head of information security join us, and his vision for where we needed to go matched everything that I'd been reading and learning. And so together with him, we've been able to build up an information security team over the last couple of years. And so now I again work with a really, really highly technical team. I kind of feel like I've come full circle from the 20 years ago when I worked with a networking team, and now I work with a security team. And day in and day out, they're teaching me things about security that I had no idea about 2 years ago. And I, in turn, bring the business lens to that. And I go out and I speak to our staff around cybersecurity and around developing good security hygiene practices and what I would call security as a life skill. And so, I've made a 23-year career in IT of combining my university learning and what I've learnt on the job. And that's not unusual. Most people do that when they finish uni. But I've also learnt plenty of things along the way, and I wanted to share a couple of them with you. The first one I've learnt is say yes to opportunity. Even if you don't know what the opportunity is or you don't know how you're going to do it, take the opportunity with both hands and just lean into it. And I would also say if somebody presents an opportunity to you, trust that they've got your best interests at heart and that they really want you to be successful. I found that often people can see things in you that you can't see in yourself, and that's both positive traits, but it's also your blind spots as well. So trust that people have got your best interests at heart. Also, networking is really, really important. Apart from one job in my career, every other job that I've had, and that includes every IT job, I've got through my networks. I've never applied for any of those roles. People have approached me for those roles. And that includes the role that took me to Melbourne in the first place. It's got to be the kind of networking that you're comfortable with though. So things like your colleagues, your friends of friends, LinkedIn, those kinds of things are a really good way for networking. but it's got to be something that you're comfortable with, otherwise you won't enjoy it and you won't keep doing it. And the last thing that I've learnt that I think is really important is that every day is a school day. I've learnt every single day of my 23 years in IT. Most of the roles that I've done didn't exist 5 or 10 years before I took them on, and that's been really, really exciting. And I really don't know what my career in the next 5 or 10 years looks like either. And again, that's one of the things that I find really exciting. The rate of change for me since I left university has been astronomical. And for you, it's only going to increase. So the thought that I would leave you with is, what is the opportunity for you? Thank you.
Thank you for saying yes to us. Amazing. Thank you. So our second speaker tonight studied astrophysics and geophysics for her undergraduate and honours degrees at the University of Edinburgh in Scotland. And she quickly adopted computational techniques as part of the toolbox that she carries with her through her scientific research life. She leads research which pioneers recording geophysical data in remote or challenging locations in places such as Antarctica, outback Australia and the Bass Strait Islands. Her adventuring spirit also extends to exploring and extending the ways that we can use computers to learn from data. She was the first ever female professor of geophysics in Australia and boasts an impressive list of achievements. We're extremely lucky to have her as a professor at the University of Tasmania, but even more honoured to have her here tonight to share her journey and her message. Please welcome Professor Anya Reedy.
Well, thank you, Rebecca, and good afternoon to you all. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. I'm terribly embarrassed about that introduction, but hopefully I can live up to it somehow. So I'd like to share with you a little bit about a little bit in the way of a career journey and some learnings, and at the end some learnings along the way. And I thought I might do that career journey sort of in a way that shares some images and a little story that kind of remind me of those steps along the way. So this is our sun, our very own star, with the little sunspots on the sun there. And if you watch them from day to day with some appropriate optical technology, they actually move a little bit day by day across the face of the sun. And this is, for me, this is a memory of my university days. Rebecca mentioned that I was an undergraduate in astrophysics at the University of Edinburgh, and I was so incredibly lucky that the astrophysics cohort, which was very small, and perhaps this is a message for the educators in the room, we were a class of about 12 in our final year, and we all had a desk. We all had a place to sit in the lab where we all did our experiments and where some of the academics were doing their experiments. So this is a sort of a memory for me of having a place to be. And it wasn't like there was any sort of particular mentoring program or anything. It was just simply that we had a place to be in that laboratory. And whether I was working on an assignment or whatever, somewhere around me I could hear, in a very sort of productive space, someone talking about designing a circuit. And in astrophysics world, handling telescopes, controlling scientific instruments, you tend not to use off-the-shelf solutions. You tend to be designing a solution. So this was my sort of introduction into the world of actually what research is, kind of solving problems that no one else has come to yet. This was there's a few themes coming through here. So this was my first computer a couple of years before Christie, I think. So and also actually the world of computing. So if I was quite a reasonable physicist, I was not quite such a reasonable mathematician. But it turned out that actually as soon as I had a computer, I was actually quite a reasonable solver of problems because of the idea of putting together algorithms and writing code. And very quickly, my place to be was sort of as comfortable with computing as it was with electronics. And this is something that I feel very, very sort of warm about remembering, the fact that, without any great song or dance, the astrophysics community in Edinburgh just basically gave us a place to hang out and learn along with everyone else. So the next image, somewhere along the line, I just sort of fell in love with volcanoes, and there was a TV program called The Children of Fire Mountain, about the volcanoes of New Zealand. And it was my incredible good fortune to be offered a PhD position studying earthquakes beneath New Zealand. So by this time I'd decided that actually the urge to be outside just got ahead of the urge to be in a nice cozy observing room in a telescope somewhere. So it was absolutely my dream to be applying electronics and computing and science to studying the natural world with this place in New Zealand. So this is Ruapehu Mountain with Ngauruhoe in the background. Another sort of really valuable experience that I had supported by the university in New Zealand was basically just a chance to putter around a bit and make a few mistakes. And, if I think back to my PhD fieldwork, it wasn't really a sort of golden run of wins. There are a few blunders and a few things that I did wrong, but, boy, if you mess up, do you remember? So very much putting together the things that I'd learned inside in Edinburgh, applying those to the outside world. Fortunately, some very kind people allowed me to make those mistakes and really sort of grow in terms of someone with a skill set, a toolbox to apply those learnings. So here's an actual toolbox rather than a metaphorical one. And this is what I was doing. I was deploying these Wilmore seismometers to learn about the earthquakes beneath New Zealand and build up a picture of the really complicated plate tectonic situation beneath New Zealand, to partly learn more about how our planet came to be, and partly sort of provide the basis for civil defence, for sort of securing the towns and cities of New Zealand and helping to manage the risk of earthquakes in that location. It almost can't get any better than that for me, especially with a Sun computer. But it did. Somehow, at the end of my PhD, I was offered a position with British Antarctic Survey. So I'm very, very fond of mountains, and I got to basically, my first job was, after PhD, was really sort of applying all those technology skill sets, collecting data in remote and challenging environments, using the data with computational tools. And one of the, Christie mentioned the international community through a shared Days of Our Lives. My international community really was really there for me through Antarctic research. It's a very small community. Actually, 2 weeks ago, I was in South Korea at a Antarctica Sciences meeting, and to be honest, quite a lot of the same people. It's a very strong group. It's quite a small group, and that's been a sort of an enduring network in my life. So here I am as an on-land seismologist, burying an instrument a little bit more advanced than the Wilmore instruments, Fortunately, I have quite warm hands. I think that picture's about -30. So, but basically doing the hard yards of getting instruments to work in some of the most challenging conditions that scientists work in. And one of the nice things about Antarctica is you have a go at other people's jobs. So I had a bit of a go at flying planes. I had a bit of a go at cooking a Sunday lunch. One day, as a non-land seismologist, one of my colleagues said, well, we've got a gap as a sort of second on data acquisition person on a marine voyage. Would you like to come along? So I was like, oh yeah, cool, that'll be fine. And we were sailing from the Falkland Islands in not many weeks' time. All the gear had already been shipped there. So there wasn't really any chance to sort of learn anything about the equipment that was going south. But the essence was that I was second on and I could just learn from the people who were, or the lead data acquisition person. And then you can imagine what happened next. The lead data acquisition person got another job. And all of a sudden I was senior data acquisition person. So I arrived in the Falkland Islands. It was 48 hours before the ship sails. This is actually very similar to the Aurora. It's the James Clark Ross. And 48 hours to basically learn the whole system. Wow. We pulled the main recording set out of its shipping cases, and there was just a mess of the main cable that looked sort of something a bit ugly like that. No manuals, nothing, complete disaster. And then I think about 20 minutes later on the ship's tannoy came, ladies and gentlemen, we have a weather window and we're going to sail early, and the ship's engines kind of started up. Was this my worst day at work ever? Possibly, yes. So all of a sudden I was in charge. The whole 9 yards had gone wrong. And I think, you have to say, I have to look back at my kindly field crew in New Zealand and my supportive electronics experience from Edinburgh. And to cut a long story short, I fixed it and we sailed and no one ever knew. So I think that was probably the day after that was probably the best professional day of my life. But anyway, suddenly you realise you're actually no longer the one of the team. You're suddenly a leader at the top of this sort of technology pyramid, and it's all up to you to make it work. So fast forward a few years to moving to Australia. So a big deal, sort of emigrating to the other side of the world, and again, sort of installing seismic instruments, trying to learn about our world. This is an ultra spark. So definitely moving up in the world of computing. I was lucky to be at ANU, really fantastic mathematical geophysics group that I'm still collaborate with very, very, very happily. But if you think of a sort of a career progression, I'd sort of reached the end of what I could do with my own experiments. And the thing now was really to join with other people and to really be a driving force in national initiatives. So I kind of had my international community, I had my local sort of scientific achievements. And I've put on here sort of a mixed reception. So I think, to be honest, I wasn't really that welcome in terms of the Australian national communities. And I can have, there were some dangers in the field, that's for sure. We see quite a few of these little critters. They seem to like wrapping themselves around the size of tarpaulins on the seismic instruments. But, the professional danger was really not being so welcome in the national community, and I definitely needed the national community to sort of put together the big funding initiatives for the collaborations ahead. So at this point, I took a position at UTAS, really quite a different portfolio of science, starting to get some industry work up and running, so that means utes instead of snowmobiles. But also, as well as those sort of new research applications, some things leaning towards the resources industry. One of my international community people said to me, look, you can either join a successful group or you can build your own. And that's really what I did at UTAS. I sort of built my own or our own opportunities, and that mix of industry, field data acquisition, advanced computing is sort of what really drove, if you like, the next chapter of opportunities. And this is a good point to acknowledge every single postdoc and PhD student that I've had the pleasure to work with, because it really makes the day wonderful when you're working with these sort of bright minds and trying to challenge them, and they're challenging you, and it's a generally wonderful thing. So sort of somewhere out of that perhaps uncertain ground, kind of built a group, and then of course you become accepted, you become part of the national scene as well. So in the last couple of years, I've moved departments. I've joined the Department of Physics, or the discipline of physics at UTAS. And, having always worked on Antarctica, I think, I hope everyone in this room would agree that it seems to have got much more urgent. You can start seeing that glaciers are really collapsing. Greenland is melting in front of our eyes. So all these sort of skills that I've kind of carried with me suddenly seem to have a bit of a rocket behind them in terms of urgency. So I'm not one of those, I haven't really changed roles very much, but I kind of feel that the role that I sort of found myself in has become very urgent. So we've got much better gear now. We really know what we're doing. And with indirect methods, with using geophysical technology, we can make, I think, a really excellent contribution to being able to understand global change, complementing lines of information from things like satellites. So this is all the stuff you can't see that you get from geophysical instruments, and of course from advanced computing. And group members and myself have really sort of advanced for the earth sciences what we can do, perhaps with the same amount of information, but crossing between different data sets, using data in a way that we wouldn't have imagined perhaps even 10 years ago, we wouldn't have imagined. And I'm a big advocate for thinking, actually, how do we use computers well? And I think it's very important that in research, and actually in many aspects of human endeavour, that we actually respect the power of the human as well as the power of the computer. And if we can use them both together, then we're in a really strong space. We can do the best job we can if we can use human attributes and computer power together. So in terms of learnings, and you're all people who are in the workforce yourself and empowering people that you work with and people who work for you. And I think this idea of providing a place where students and employees can kind of be themselves, but are also challenged to develop, is terrifically important. So my lovely desk next to the sun camera from uni days is a little sort of emblem of that place. I think it's really important that we provide our co-workers and our employees a sort of a place to learn deeply and build experience. And perhaps this is something that we don't necessarily do so well for our junior female colleagues. We perhaps protect them a little bit, whereas we're a bit happier to challenge their male colleagues. So I would sort of say, well, you know, let your female colleagues be challenged and make mistakes as much as the guys. And I think this sort of idea of building resilience, building support for future encounters, especially if they're non-default groups for the profession, people of colour, Indigenous people perhaps, as well as women in the workforce. One thing I think is quite funny is that you know, anyone who perhaps didn't give me a seat at the table when I was perhaps more skilled and a better hire than my male colleagues gave me a massive lesson in resilience and a massive lesson in how institutes, nations, government lobbyists perhaps work. So, you know, perhaps it sort of came back in a positive way. In the end, that they sort of gave me a bit of a toolbox that they didn't expect to give me. Actually, it's interesting how the different themes come together, isn't it? The deep satisfaction from a job that fits the person, and as a privilege to be an educator at UTAS, and my dream as an educator is that everyone in any one of my classes ends up in a profession that really suits them, and I really hope that applies to the female students as well as the male students, and that there's nothing that deters them from a career in science or technology or computing, if that's the job that fits that person. So, thank you.
Thank you so much. All right. So our final speaker for the night is the Chief Executive Officer and Managing Director of Aurora Energy, a 100% owned Tasmanian energy retailer. She has significant executive experience in the utility sector and in Australia and New Zealand in both the public and private sector. She's passionate about creating and realising value for customers, communities, employees, partners and shareholders, and has proven performance in the creation and execution of strategy. She grew up in Alice Springs and says that technology really chose her, initially studying a business and accounting degree until a life-defining moment that projected her into technology and changed her life. She holds a Masters of Business Administration, a Bachelor of Computer Science, and is a member of the Australian Institute of Company Directors with an impressive resume and a fantastic name. Please welcome Rebecca Caudill.
I didn't do PowerPoint. It's kind of one of my things. So I'm just going to, sit down here if that's okay. And I'll try not to sing. Whenever I get a microphone, I always feel the need to do karaoke. But I won't, I promise, because it would be really, really dreadful. Who's got career envy for Anya? Like, seriously, except for the snake. I was like, what a thing. Like Rebecca said, I didn't choose technology. That wasn't a career choice for me at school. To be honest, I don't think anyone ever mentioned science, engineering. I wouldn't even known thing. And then the other thing is, there's a theme here. I'm not even sure if my school had a computer. Actually, I don't recall ever citing one. Maybe in the office, maybe in the principal's office. Maybe he had one. I don't know. But that wasn't ever a career choice for me. So I kind of found myself where I am today, and technology is a huge, huge part of that. When you get asked to do these sorts of things, you kind of think back and go, oh, all right, how did that all happen? And with the benefit of hindsight and being able to look back, I realised that probably this technology choosing me was probably one of my pivotal moments in my life, and I hadn't really clocked that until I got asked to speak here. So thank you, Rebecca. And why was it so pivotal? I wouldn't be doing the job I'm doing today as CEO, and this sounds really odd, if it wasn't for technology choosing me. And I wouldn't be married to my husband, and I wouldn't have my son if I hadn't fallen into technology. Both two really pivotal moments that happened as a young 18-year-old. So I was 18, so how did this all happen? How did technology choose me? So I was an 18-year-old. I was doing a Bachelor of Business, majoring in accounting. I was working full-time to fund my way through university, and I suddenly, through no fault of my own, I'll just declare that now, found myself, my casual role, I suddenly found myself unemployed. And as many of you would know, university degrees do not feed you, house you, fund your social activities, or put fuel in your car. So I had a serious dilemma and I had to sort it out. So I applied, I don't know for how many jobs, it was dozens. I was in a thing, and as a young 18-year-old girl, I discovered very quickly, even though I was in the second year of a business degree, I was relatively unemployable, and the reason being is I interviewed well, but I couldn't type, because that was my career choices at that point. And I couldn't type, seriously. And I'm not talking about computers, I'm talking about typewriters. Yeah, there was some electronic typewriters, whiteout, which my 16-year-old son, the other day told me still exists. And I'm like, it's just backspace, guys. How hard can it be? But anyway, so I found myself unemployable, and I was reading the newspaper and I saw this job for a computer traineeship with the Library Services Department. I was desperate. I was like, who knows? I put in an application, I jagged an interview. Next thing I know, they offered me a job. There was one condition of that job. I had to change my degree. They didn't want a business degree, they wanted a computer science degree. At that point in time, I would have said yes to anything. I would have done fine arts. Seriously. So I said yes, having no idea what that decision is. I was in my second year of a business accounting degree. Only reason I was doing that was, my parents had a small business. I did the books. I was good at accounting at school. Just seemed like an easy option. I got accepted into a uni to do it, and I was bored silly. Economics, business, law. Now, the irony in all of this is tomorrow I sign off the financial statements with my board for $1 billion revenue company, and I'm a failed accountant. You can't tell anyone, all right? Shut-in house rules. No one can know. So there's an irony in all of this. But, like I said, I was desperate. I was unemployed, I had no money, I needed a job. And I was like, well, how different could be the business faculty to the science and engineering faculty? Yeah. Well, there is an interesting journey in itself, because it is really, really different. And I found the transition really, really hard. But it was, like I said, one of those life moments. And I'd had no idea as a young 18-year-old just how pivotal that yes was. The job itself was fantastic. So I don't know how many of you have worked in libraries, but they're amazing environments. I worked for the systems librarian, who was the only male on the leadership rock team. So 18, my first proper job. The previous job that I had, Caudill, was for a rather unsavoury organisation, so I probably shouldn't talk about that one. So this was my first legitimate job. And we had an all-female, so the director of library services was female, the whole executive was female, except for my boss, who was fantastic. Diversity matters was my lesson. Diversity matters in every context, guys. Never lose sight of it. Female domination is not a worthwhile goal. We just want equality. Yeah. He was great. He gave me the autonomy and the space to explore and learn, because that's what libraries are all about. It's about learning. I got to work on different platforms. Most of them now don't exist. It's amazing how technology becomes obsolete before more technology comes around. But then he taught me how to solder, very useful skill. And he encouraged me, and I don't know how many barcodes I produced. I reckon it would have been in the billions. I used to have nightmares about barcodes. But it was one of those places where I was encouraged to be curious, to grow, to learn, to explore. But then there was the, comp sci degree. And I transitioned from the business faculty mid-semester. So they were well and truly through, and to say that I was struggling was probably understatement of the year. It was blowing my mind, and I had no idea. But very, very fortunately for me, the course coordinator, the head of the faculty, happened to be on my interview panel, so she was somewhat vested in me being successful. I was extremely vested in me being successful, because if I didn't pass, I no longer had a job. So we were both things. Anyway, she encouraged me to find a peer, student peer, to be my buddy, to help me through with my assignments and, support me through my transition from business to science. And his name was Michael Caudill. Interesting coincidence, we got the same surname. Only thing is, I didn't have that surname at that time. He proved to be a phenomenal tutor. And later on, he also proved to be a fantastic father to our 16-year-old son, and has been my life partner for the last 30 plus years. And also proved to be my biggest fan and advocate, and could see the potential in me, which I never could do. But what I discovered through that is I could do my business degree. My first year at uni was probably more akin to a gap year. I know gap years aren't meant to be at uni. I thought I'd just merge the two. But it just never, ever really resonated with me. Once I kind of got my head around it, and that mind explosion went over it, it just clicked. It just, working with circuit boards and doing machine language, and there was something precise and tangible about it that just resonated with me. And I suddenly discovered I had a talent for this. This was something I was good at. And there's something tangible about putting all of life's combinations and permutations into an if-then-else statement. That need for control, yeah, it really resonated with me. And the other key thing about that moment and doing a comp sci is it future-proofed me. So what I learnt in that degree 30 plus years ago, I'm still using today in my current role as a CEO, which is kind of phenomenal when you think about it. But they're still just as relevant. It taught me how to problem solve, to really think through a problem analytically. That's a phenomenal life skill. Taught me how to understand a customer or business needs and translate that into something that you could systemize and use. That's something I'm doing right at the moment. My business needs to transform. I'm assuming most of you are my customer. I hope so. If someone has rung your bell or door knocked, please talk to me after this. But, you know, our customer needs and expectations, their expectations of how technology and service integrates is fundamentally changing. So I need to reset my business to give it a digital operating model. It just so happens I kind of get a little bit of knowledge about that, and that's really handy as a CEO. It also, I understand the value of data. My specialisation before I moved into general management was business intelligence. This was before we started talking about big data. We had data scientists. I didn't build data lakes, I built data warehouses. I didn't build data ponds, I had data marts. But, you know, I learned very early the value of data, the insight that can give you, and then when you couple that with technology, how clever you can be and how powerful that can be. And we're only just touching the surface of that as a community. But, you know, that's been really useful in my current role as well, because I sit on a huge data source. And how do we use that for good, not necessarily... what was the entity? Cambridge Analytica? Yeah. Anyway, but the other good thing about having a tech degree, and I don't know about you guys, but, you know, I rarely have to ring the IT service centre and log a ticket. I don't know about you, but that's one of life's gifts that I'm really, really pleased that I'm missing out on. Apologies to anyone in the room who works in an IT service centre. And seriously, my husband and I both graduated together, and you know, if my skills are starting to get a little rusty, as my 16-year-old pointed out to me the other night, he goes, "Why are you talking at a women in technology event, Mum? You don't know anything about technology." And I think he's right. I've never played Fortnite. I have no desire to. But but I can now. I just ring home. And I get the most amazing service centre support. Adrian, you'd understand, my husband's currently a project manager at UTAS. So, I get phenomenal customer service. And if he's not home, I can ask the 16-year-old. Don't get quite the same level of customer service. Quite a lot of attitude, actually. But he can usually answer my problems. But that's I think, one of the things when you're starting out in these careers, you just have no idea, and I think there's that common theme in all of this. But, you know, my that choice had led me, it's an amazingly transportable career. It's taken me across sectors, across markets, across borders. It's enabled me to do a whole host of things that I never would have imagined as a 16-year-old completing my year 12 at Alice Springs High School, a very prestigious establishment. Not. But it gave me an amazing career. It gave me an ability to think about problems differently. It gave me my husband and my life partner. It gave me my son, which I never thought was possible as well, because that certainly wasn't on my life goals. But when I look back, it's really weird when you look back over a career of 30 plus years and to what that young teen aspirations or not was at that point in time and where you can land. It just shows you the phenomenal power of an education, finding your passion and just saying yes. So thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much. So tonight we heard from 3 incredible women, thank you, who arrived at their technology careers, not degrees, careers from very different pathways. And for me, that's the beauty in technology and diversity, is that regardless of where you came from and how we got there, we can make a career of it and truly make a difference. So thank you. We're going to now move and invite all the speakers to come up for the panel. And I'd also like to introduce Jeff Murray, who's the Executive Director of University Services, to join us. So if you have any burning questions, do we have the throwing mic? Excellent. I should be a good thrower since I play tennis, but anyone? Oh, I might throw it too far. All right, you go.
I'll walk it.
Yes, please, come. Don't know, are they comfortable chairs? Oh. Sorry, put the names on the bottom, so. Does anyone have any questions? Yes? Oh. I might get us started with Jeff because you haven't spoken yet tonight. So, Jeff, you've run this event the last few years and it's been fantastic. And I just wanted to know from you, I guess, why is it important to have diversity in the workplace and you know, bringing it forward through these events? What does it mean to you?
So the idea for this event actually came from my daughter. I have 3 daughters. She runs Women in Medicine, and at that time, as a technology leader doing the job Adrian has, there's a lot of talk in the press around the lack of females, in particular, in technology centres. So we took a look at our numbers and they weren't the best. They were pretty low. We're sitting around 12 odd %. So we realised that we needed to improve. And so we did some research on why we needed to improve. And we found that diverse teams make better decisions. Not only do they make better decisions, they perform better and they're better places to work. So we started the event. We do it because we need more females in IT services at the University of Tasmania. We do it because we need more females in STEM subjects. In fact, in this role I'm in now, I have the lean team, and Bikram in the lean team just told me today he's a member of the STEMinists in Launceston. So there's an idea for a future morph of this event. So that's why we do it.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sophie. I'm the Diversity and Inclusion Specialist at Taswater, and we're really passionate about getting more women into STEM areas and in particular into technology. We're pretty well represented in our science areas. Engineering is lacking, but we're getting there. But in technology, we really don't have any women at all. And part of our struggle is that we're not even getting the applications through the door. So do you have any practical tips as to how we can get we know they're kind of getting into uni, but then we're not seeing them come through our doors. So is there any advice as to how we can kind of meet that gap?
Who'd like to take that one? Well, maybe, yeah.
I understand that the focus on STEM is really important, but you know, with the diversity theme, as I've got an arts degree, I've got an English Lit and Sociology degree, and that hasn't held me back from working in IT for 23 years. So I think while focus on STEM is important, diversity from all areas is really important as well. And one thing I would say around getting people in the door is that when it comes to job descriptions, like men will look at a job description and they'll look at a position description and go, yep, I reckon I can do 40 to 50% of that. I mean, women will look at it and say, okay, I could do 95% of it. There's one thing that I can't do that job. So it's around how you develop that confidence in women to say, just lean in and just give yourself an opportunity and back yourself and put yourself forward for things that, you know, you'll probably be learning on the job, but it's something that'll really grow you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. And one of the things that we have to sort of take on board when we're thinking about diversity in IT is that we're sort of bathed in society. And Australian society is is perhaps sort of not as proactive and not as sort of kind of necessarily thinking in the same way. So we have to be a little bit careful when we think about equity. Equity of an advert is not necessarily equity of the opportunity because of exactly the things that have been raised. So I think we should be a little bit proactive in terms of encouraging people to apply. Perhaps internships are a good link for that kind of thing, because they start to actually translate that job description into a feeling that you can actually grow into that job, even if you're sitting on the 95. So I think an awareness that there are societal forces that are sort of impeding people from applying, and to be equitable, we need to think about things like internships that start to redress that imbalance.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I'd just like to second what Christie was saying. One of the things that we did not that long ago was the way we'd been writing our position descriptions. I couldn't get a single female to apply. We actually went out to some consultants and they looked at our PD and went, yeah, a guy will look at that and go, yes, yeah, I can do that, exactly. But a female would look at it and do exactly as Christie said. So we actually recast how we did the PD, re-advertised the job, and then we got female applicants to apply. So it's again looking at the way that you might be, putting your position descriptions together. As simple as that, the way you're wording them, the way you're pitching them. So that was something that we've learned, and learned to go out and out again until we get what we want. So yeah.
So yeah, I want to just follow on from Adrian there. That came from one of our team members. The other things we've done is find places where females like to work and then encourage them to go beyond that. So a lot of females like to work in the change space, but we can grow them exactly from there into the project space. And as soon as they go into the project space, they're across the whole of IT. And to do that, we employ on capability, not on experience. So express what you need in a person, not where they've been, where they've come from, because if we do that, we're never going to get that channel in. So there's a couple of other things that we've been doing that have helped.
Thanks. Do we have another question? Got one there. Oh, yep. Go for it. Yeah.
Okay. I was just wondering, for anyone who wants to take it, when you've got, you are entering a male-dominated space and you've got people who are resistant to that, what are your strategies for dealing with those kind of men?
Any men in the room? No. Anyone? Okay.
How do I deal with men? There we go. No, we won't go there. Sorry, Jeff. No, look, I don't. This is going to be probably a bit. I don't look at people through a gender view. I don't look at people, you're a male or a female, and therefore I will. I look at people. Everyone fronts up differently. Some people front up and they're really, constructive and engaging, and they listen and they want to do, and some people don't. And I try really hard not to stereotype based on any form of gender or ethnicity or anything, because I think that's a risk. And two wrongs don't make a right is one of my core beliefs. So my strategies with people is, I always seek to understand and not necessarily try to be understood. I think, and really understand where they're coming from. Look, I did a lot of, large part of my career I did business analysis. You learn a lot of skills about listening to people, finding out where they're coming from. Everyone's got a problem. find out what their problem is and try to help them out, and then work with them and develop a relationship. And you can do that pretty well with the most belligerent people, including men.
I'm actually studying IT and business at UTAS at the moment, and I've recently started my first full-time job in the IT industry. And I just wanted to know, sort of from each of you, if you could tell yourselves a key piece of advice when you were sort of entering your careers, what would that be?
Start down this end.
I think a key piece of advice is that everything is a growth experience. So even if something doesn't go well, you kind of don't feel it as a bad thing. Just feel it as a bit of ammunition for next time, or a bit of knowledge for next time. So yeah, you just kind of learn to evolve.
I might also chip in as well. I've got my mic. This was one of my first roles in IT as a change manager, and I remember for the first few months, sitting in the room and going, oh my God, it's like they're speaking another language. And I know another language, maybe I should start speaking another language. But what happened over a time is I started to learn the language, I started to understand it better, and I became more comfortable. So give yourself time to become comfortable, because I look back now and go, I can't believe I was so stressed. And I would sit there and go, just writing it, I'm going to Google that later, I'm going to Google that later. And now I just sit there and have a conversation, and it's the norm. So, you just learn, so give yourself time.
And I'd add to that, IT is a really, really broad field. So IT is this big, and everyone in IT is a specialist in about this much. And one of the things that people will do in IT is they'll use lots of really weird acronyms as a way to try and shut you down so that you don't ask any more questions. The onus is on IT people to explain something in a business language or a language that is appropriate to their customers, not for you to step into their shoes and to understand. So if you start working with people or engaging with people and they'll talk about widget blah, 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 if you don't understand, say you don't understand and say, can you explain that to me again? And often you'll find you scratch the surface and ask a few questions. They don't really understand it either, but they're just trying to give you some weird acronyms to shut you down. So keep asking questions.
You're so right, Christie. This industry just loves technobabble. I don't know how many discussions I've had about the cloud, and everyone looks to the sky, and it's like, for God's sakes, it's just another data centre somewhere else. It's not in the sky. But look, I think we often think that life is, there's a bit of game theory for you, that life is a one-shot play. It's not. The decision you make today is not going to probably have that, you know what I mean? You'll get to do it again tomorrow. And I think sometimes we think it's just binary. We think it's just ones and zeros. It's not. You're not playing Fortnite. You're okay.
I'm going to quote a few legends. So, Christie, I wrote down your lessons. I've got a couple here. Does your soul match your role? Something to think about. Say yes to opportunity. Every day's a school day. Very good one. From Anya, being thrown in the deep end on a ship going to Antarctica can be terrifying and rewarding. Very good. Join a successful group or build your own. And UHAC's a great place to build your own. And it's on the 7th of September. Challenge people equally. That was a very good pickup. And Rebecca, it can take dozens of job applications. I can support that one. I think between my first and second role, I applied for 54 jobs. Diversity matters, and we just want equality. Choose a partner who sees the potential in you. Great choice. And that's enough from me. Thank you, ladies.
Yep.
Right. I'm Cheryl from Tas Networks. I actually had more of a comment than a question, and I just wanted to say how fantastic it is to have events like this, because we talk about the trend of women not leaning in or not stepping up to challenges, the same as men, and
And I think examples like this where you hear people's story and you can relate to something, you pick something out and you go, okay, in theory I know women should step up, but when you relate and you go, oh, that's familiar, that really resonates. It's like, oh, could I do? And then suddenly you put yourself in that position, go, maybe I could do that, rather than maybe that person could do that. So I think it's fantastic. I think there's such power in story, and so well done. Thanks.
Any other questions? Oh, yeah.
Instead of tailoring a job advertisement for women, can we not figure out why we do this to start with, that why we don't apply? Is it not something that's instilled in us? Because that's exactly, I can agree with exactly that. Unless you meet the criteria, it means that's not for you. But shouldn't we look back and figure out why all of our women think the same thing within that portion or whatever it is, and start working on not having that as the norm and understanding that's what we do. So therefore we'll tailor the last bit a bit differently. Shouldn't we actually tailor some of the earlier things to not have this happen? I don't know. I started doing some STEM stuff in Sydney with the Department of Education, and they're down to kindergarten now. And they're saying that they've got to introduce STEM in kindergarten, so it's the norm. So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe, do we need to? Do we need to look back a little bit earlier in what we do?
So I'm not suggesting that we tailor position descriptions to women. What I was making a comment on is the way that women look at position descriptions. And absolutely, I think that we should go back and do some understanding around why that is and what it is that we can do to change that as a society. But in the meantime, we still need to get more women into technology. So let's do both in parallel. Yeah.
I'm just going to put on my parent hat. Because I think this is really important. I think, parents, schools have got a role in place, don't get me wrong, but I think we as parents, I read a really great article in the New Scientist magazine. I can't remember the geneticist's name, but, he was asserting through his research of twins that, it's more akin to nature versus nurture, and that as parents we have a responsibility to expose our children to as many opportunities as we can. I didn't get that exposure as a kid, but fortunately I lucked it at 18. And I think that's what our role is as parents, is to encourage our kids to from a young age. My poor son, who's been exposed to so much science, and he's reluctantly shared with me in the last 12 months that actually he's thinking about doing law. And both my husband and I are like, an arts degree? But, but that's I think that's where our role is. And I think, for any of you who are a parent of a daughter or a son, making sure they expose them to all the amazing opportunities that are available to them. And I think that's our responsibility as parents.
And it's funny you say that, because I am actually a twin. And growing up, we always compared ourselves to one another, and her strengths are my weaknesses and my weaknesses are her strengths. And a lot of the time it was because my parents growing up would say, oh, you're a really good writer. Oh, you're really good at this and you're really good at that. And that message kind of stuck. So I agree with the parent thing. Like, my sister always goes, oh, but you're the good admin-y one. I'm just the people person. But, it's taken a bit of time, but we've both bridged those gaps. But it's really important from the people around you, the parents and your loved ones, to hear those messages makes a difference, especially given that we're both the same and we grew up the same and we're totally different. Yep.
Oh, that's another great question. I think with these sorts of things that are being raised, kind of a dual approach is really good, because you absolutely have to act for the here and now. There's no doubt that in 2019, we live in a society that has different expectations of men and women if you sort of average out society. So initiatives like the one Adrian mentioned, when you sort of drill down a little bit into how you're advertising, or perhaps some sort of proactivity in who you ask to apply for the job is needed. And then the approach that you're alluding to, which is really asking the questions about what's happening to the next generation, and is there something we can do to start sort of narrowing the expectation gap as our 1-year-olds become toddlers. Yeah, and I mean, you can immediately see that toddlers have different expectations across gender, and it's interesting where that came from. Yeah, and perhaps pertinent to technology is also kind of having a conscious thought about separating out people's qualities. So a sort of a typical one is being feminine and being good at computer programming. You know, the two are not exclusive. You can actually be both. So I think that's something that we can encourage and make sure that we don't sort of mess up in our young people that we're working with, is that we sort of create the space for people to be themselves in the world of technology, and I think that already help.
Jeff. Sorry.
It's a really good question that you ask, and it wouldn't be a diversity event if we didn't talk about unconscious bias. And that's why we do the things we do, and it's why we do this event. But we always talk about unconscious bias. It's worse than that, it's conscious. Give you an example. My first job was in the police department, and back in 1980-something, 81, we had like 2 females. My boss was the only female in the whole of the West Australian Police, and she was one of like 4 or 5 Australia-wide. Superintendent Val Doherty, I still remember her name for a strange reason. And the reason we only had 1 female in the police department was because there was a wall down at the Maylands Police Academy that everyone had to jump, and it was not physically possible for a female to jump the wall. And Val got into the department because she worked out that she would go down there, she would feign an injury and avoid jumping the wall. And then she made it very clear that if she didn't get in, she'd be a pretty difficult person. She became the only one. That still happens today. So we looked at those role statements because they used to say we want 5 years experience in whatever coding language it was. And if you've only got 12% of people in the industry coming from a female background, where do they get that? And do you really need that? It takes different thinking to solve the problems of tomorrow. And if we're getting that 5 years experience and applying it, we're just taking yesterday's thinking to tomorrow's problems and getting the same outcome. So it really takes a conscious thought to change the way we do this. What we need is a set of attributes, not a set of past experiences.
I think we've got time for one more question. Oh, there's 2. We can do 2. We can do 2.
Hi, so I'm a bit similar, so I'm also at the start of my career. I've been working in state government in finance the last 2 years, and I'm also doing business and ICT at UTAS. I guess my question is, from a young female's perspective, what can we do to build our confidence in leaning into opportunities? So whether that's looking at those job applications and not having that 100% and still applying, or having a difficult conversation at work, or putting your hand up in the boardroom. So yeah, like what can we do?
Mentors are fantastic, and that can be a mentor that you work with. It can be somebody that you know through your personal life, or just somebody that you look at the path they've trodden and you want some guidance and support on how to to get there. And the kinds of things that you're talking about, I felt all of that, when I was starting out as well, and I'm sure a lot of people do. And it's around finding somebody that you can have open and honest conversations with about how you're feeling, and that includes when you're feeling vulnerable, so that they can share their stories with you as well and give you tips and hints and guidance on how to make yourself feel more confident. I guess one of the biggest learnings for me is I went to a leadership course probably 7 or 8 years ago now in Melbourne, where I live, and the CEO of the ABC spoke, and one of the questions he asked us is, what do you think one of the things is that weighs on my mind all the time? And I said, that you don't feel good enough to be in your role. And he said, yes. And for me, that was a light bulb moment to think, if somebody that has got to a really senior role like that is still having those moments of self-doubt, it's around how you quieten that voice inside you. And I think mentors can really help.
And just to add to that, that's one of the reasons why we have these events as well, is the opportunity to network with other people so that you can hear that they're having the same concerns, they have had same worries, so that you can work it out with them, or, find a mentor or something. That's why we have these kind of events. One more question. Do we have the throwing? Yep, just at the back there. Oh, sorry, you had a question as well. Sorry, yep, go for it.
My question's for Rebecca. I was really fascinated by your background in science and how you applied that scientific methodology to business. And I guess you talked a lot about your early days and kind of not so much about how you got to where you are today in this position you're at now at Aurora, and I guess how you went from creating billions of barcodes to being the head of a billion-dollar company. I'm just really interested in maybe those pivotal opportunities that brought you to where you are today later in your career.
There's no science behind it. There was no magic plan. I never aspired to be a CEO. It just happened. Look, I was a bit like Anya and Christie, and it's just opportunities present, and I always say yes. I just say yes. So what brought me into this role, I've been a general manager for a while. I'm quite happy. I like doing stuff. I like to get stuff done, and I have a strong belief that CEOs don't do a lot of getting stuff done. So hence why I never aspired to it, because I really like to achieve stuff. And so for me, what brought me into this role is I was in Western Australia working for the state-owned energy retailer, and then amalgamated with the state-owned generator. So basically hydro cabs, Aurora, amalgamated, and there was two of everything. And it's one of those life moments where there's two of everything. I was born in Hobart. I've always wanted to come home. I wanted to bring my family here. They've been listening to me for 30 years about how fabulous Tassie is, and I never thought I'd ever get to come here. It's such a hard place to get a job. Like, it is really hard as an outsider to get back here. It's just an observation. Us mainlanders aren't that bad. But especially those who were born here too, I never understand that. But for me, I took the opportunity to apply for a bunch of jobs. Just so happened the Tasmanian energy reforms were happening here, and I applied for two jobs. I applied for this one, and I applied for one at Tas Networks. And the Tas Networks recruitment process was really slow. And so I got offered this one before I was even offered an interview for the Tas Networks one. Hence why I accepted this one. No more rocket science than that. I think, look, back yourself. For everyone in the room, just back yourself. And if you ever have a shadow of doubt, I think, when those voices, and you all know what I'm talking about, those voices, yeah, you've got to find ways to shut them up, because they're not helpful and they're really limiting things. I'm really lucky. I found my life partner at an early age, and he is my biggest fan. He cheering me on if he could be. And that's really helpful because, you know, whenever I've ever doubted myself, I've always had him going, yeah, you can apply for that job. Don't worry about those last 3 or 4 criteria. They're not important. They're only highly desirable. You know, and that's useful, isn't it? And that's what I mean. I think, you know, exactly the right advice. And you never know where life's going to take you. It's not a one-shot plan. If you don't like the job, you leave and find something else. Back yourself. Mm-hmm. That's basically how I don't know. I've been exceedingly lucky. Mm-hmm. Things just present and life works out.
Cool. One more question. Last one. I'll give it a good throw.
I don't trust myself.
That's what I was worried about, knocking someone out.
Hi everyone, I'm Abe Becker, the Managing Director of a small IT company based here in Hobart. I just had a couple of quick questions about practical steps that I can take as the Managing Director to ensure that our job offers are, I guess, more accessible to women. And secondly, maybe a few steps I can take, practical steps in the workplace to ensure that we have a workplace that is a positive place for women to work in.
Great question. Anyone? Sure.
Do you know any really good women that you would like to recruit into your organisation that work in technology?
So our social media manager is a woman and works in our company. We've had a few interns in the past who have been female. We haven't taken in, but yeah, we're still in an early stage. So we're not a very large or a long-lasting company or anything like that. Yeah.
Because I'd suggest start with your network. So find one amazing woman that you know through your networks that you would like to come and work with you and get her to come on board, and then work with her networks to find other people as well. And I think it's around it just being an inclusive environment that provides opportunities for everyone. And I think that is really the important. This is not sort of a women versus men opportunities. It's opportunities for everyone in technology. And I think when you're writing things like position descriptions, bounce them off people that you trust, people that you know in the industry, people that perhaps work in different industries that can provide you with a different lens, and say, this is where I want to try and bring some diverse skills into the organisation. If you were reading this, what do you think? So do like a mini focus group before you send it out to market.
Awesome. Thank you. So that concludes the Q&A. Thank you very much, speakers and Jeff. When you came in, you did grab a little raffle, and we do have some lucky door prizes. They're really good prizes, so I'm going to get Jo to help me very conveniently out of what I'm hoping she's going to pull out wine, but it's not wine. So the first prize that we're going to give away is some Apple AirPods, and I'll just chuck those in there. Give them a good shake.
You can draw it out.
Oh, I can do the job. Okay. I've got the longer arm, I suppose. Okay, so we've got orange C73. Anyone? No?
Didn't have anyone?
Yes?
Yeah.
Oh! Yay! Congratulations. All right. And we have an Apple Watch. I might just take that one myself. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. Okay, black C02. How did you know that so quickly? Did you just put your hand up? Oh, did you? I was going to say, you put your hand up before I even called the number out. C.
By mistake. Oh,
Was it
black?
black?
Or
Black.
Yes.
Yes. Sorry. All right, we got one more prize. Jo, do you want to? And this one's an. Pardon? Oh no, they're for the feedback. And we've got an iPad Air. So Jo, do you want to do the honours?
Black C03.
Ah, congratulations. Thank you. All righty. So we've almost wrapped up this portion of the night and we'll get to some nibbles and drinks and networking. But first of all, we really just wanted to say a big, big thank you to the speakers. You were so amazing and inspiring, and we just have a little small token of thank you. Now, I have some additional thank yous, so I'm going to read off my list so I don't forget anyone. But I wanted to say a big thank you to Jo, Katie, Kelly and Crystal, who we couldn't have put this event together without them. Thank you to Jeff and Adrian for all the support and continuing the tradition of these events. Thank you to Anthony, who was doing all the IT for us, and Hayden for filming. So thank you. I hope you got my good side. And all the other IT staff that were involved. We've also got Emma Young from Student Recruitment and the Defence Force Recruiting with their virtual reality out in the networking. So thank you to them as well. That concludes the day, and
not quite.
Not quite. Sorry.
So I just wanted to say a big thank you to Beth for emceeing the event. So a big round of
They're almost as tall as me.
Last but not least, to the main organiser of the event, who's been very quiet tonight and slinking in the corner. She's done a tremendous effort pulling this together a week before she goes on maternity leave. So a big thank you to Jo. So thank you all, and we'll adjourn out and do some networking.
Just across the hallway there, and see you out there.